Hi, shalom everyone. Thanks again for joining us for another episode. Before we start, both of us, Aziz and I, are kind of wearing some soccer elements here. It's funny because yesterday when we were having the prep session, I mentioned that the soccer leagues are going to shortly return. I know that my family at least is excited, and I would just like to also apologize to my dad that I'm wearing Liverpool and not Manchester United. But one of the things that we noticed is that all three of us are connected and supporting Liverpool. Not me, but my husband. I'm just saying that so I'll be safe with the family. Well, hopefully that's another element that will be connecting us in a virtual world. So we also asked you last time to send pictures from sports events. So we thought it would be a nice thing to start with. So go Liverpool. They were supposed to win this year. COVID stopped them.
Will win. It's coming back. For those who don't know, just give it a couple more weeks. I think probably not everybody following us cares about football, or as Americans call it incorrectly, soccer. But I'm excited about being able to watch some games soon. So.
Me too.
Yeah, I think that in general, sports is something that connects us all. Aziz, you even have a short movie about how soccer connects between people, and you were working for a while with youth, right? Connecting Israeli and Palestinian youth playing soccer together. So I think that's amazing. And we were trying to figure out for the past half hour why Americans still say soccer while the rest of the world says football. We didn't get an answer, so if anyone knows, you can feel free to tell us on the chat, and maybe we'll talk about it later. But today, let's get started. On our episode, What a Wonderful World, we'll be joined by Samantha, who you've heard. She's from CREST, and we'll actually start with a short video as an intro, and then we'll hear from you, Samantha.
At the Center for Responsible Travel, we believe travel done well can promote a healthy environment while helping communities thrive.
Tourism is the world's largest service industry. In fact, it provides 1 in 10 jobs globally.
But tourism, more than any other industry, relies on a healthy environment and vibrant local cultures.
Unfortunately, the way many of us travel can, at times, do a great deal of damage.
The growing threats of climate change and over-tourism make CREST work to promote responsible travel more important than ever.
We must transform the tourism industry in order for tourism itself to survive.
What we believe is that we need to really look at tourism with the same kind of rigor that we've looked at the oil industry, we've looked at mass agriculture and so on, to help people understand the impact of tourism.
CREST is unique, providing interdisciplinary analysis and innovative solutions to support responsible tourism.
CREST projects have ranged from a study of the economic value of bear hunting versus bear viewing in the Great Bear Rainforest in British Columbia, to strengthening small-scale and household-based tourism in Cuba.
At CREST, we believe the answer is not to stay home. Rather, it is to travel in ways that are smarter.
Responsible travel provides a wonderful vacation that protects the environment, provides benefits to local communities, and honors indigenous cultures.
My name is Martha Honey.
My name is Samantha Bray.
My name is Gregory Miller.
And I believe
we can transform the way the world travels.
Aziz, this time you're muted. Always happens to me, but.
I was saying the bad stuff. Now I can say all the good. No, I wanted to say thank you for this awesome video, because the values in it is something we definitely believe in and subscribe to, and we'll be talking much more about. But maybe before we go into CREST and what you guys do there, you can tell us about what brought you, Samantha, into this world of responsible tourism. What made you interested in it, and how did you even end up at CREST?
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here with you today talking about this. Tourism is so near and dear to my heart, and to be able to travel as a traveler and a consumer and experience our world that way, and then also work so that others can experience our world is such a wonderful privilege. And I fell into it by chance. My parents are actually potters, and I grew up going to art shows with them across the United States. And I'm from a very small rural community in the Midwest in Missouri, and many of my peers didn't have the opportunities that I had to challenge my worldview by getting outside of the boundaries of our county and our state even. So I got to appreciate other ways of doing things in other cultures. And I went to college at Missouri State University and had travel and tourism as a minor, just because it was something that I thought was fun, and it must be fun to work in the travel industry. But my junior year, Jonathan Tortolo, the director of the National Geographic Center for Sustainable Destinations, came to speak at my university about the concept of geotourism, which is about sustaining and enhancing geographical character of place. And it's really about preserving and protecting the unique sense of place that each community has. That is really what the tourism offering is. And I just fell in love with the idea, especially as someone from a rural community that has wonderful small businesses that people seem to really appreciate, and just the understanding that people not from our community could think those small businesses and the things that we were doing was interesting and cool was so eye-opening to me. And it really made me think about my own travel experiences and the unique opportunities that I had when visiting a different place. And so this idea of geotourism just really kind of embedded itself in me. And I did several internships through the travel industry, just trying to gain a holistic understanding of the industry. One of the things we learned in our tourism classes was that tourism planning should really include a diverse array of stakeholders from, public, private, and civil sectors, and people need to be around the table who aren't necessarily always included in the conversation. So I just tried to get as wide a base as I could in tourism, and went on to do a Master of Tourism Administration at George Washington University in DC with a focus on sustainable tourism management. And I landed at CREST right after graduation there, and I've been there for almost 7 years now. So that's how I got where I am. The position opened up right as I was finishing my degree, and it was just serendipitous that this is where I landed.
The stars aligned.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about the different projects that you have running in CREST right now?
Yeah, well, obviously with COVID, we've had to evaluate a lot of the work we're doing and adjust quickly. But I think one of the good things that is coming out of this is that it's showing that as an industry, we can pivot and we can make changes when they need to happen. So we're doing that ourselves at CREST right now. We're working on several interesting projects that are about sustainability and resilience fundamentally, and how we can recover as an industry responsibly from COVID to make us stronger in the future. So a few examples of this include work that we're doing in Cuba. And we've been in Cuba since 2016, when relations between the United States and Cuba thawed a little bit. Of course, it's been a bit of a roller coaster with all of the changes with requirements and availability to travel to Cuba. But we're working there currently, and the original project was meant to be a study on climate change policy and how that impacted local community-based tourism. and what the local community-based tourism experiences could do to be more resilient and adaptive when it comes to climate change. And we've pivoted that now to be a study on impacts in Cuba from COVID-19 on the tourism industry, and also Costa Rica. We decided to bring Costa Rica into the study as well, looking at two different types of destinations that are very reliant on tourism in many ways, and what lessons can we learn from COVID-19 that can be applied to climate change policy. We should be learning as much as we can while we're all navigating this crisis and seeing how we can make other areas better as well. So that's a year-long study that we are just embarking on now. We're also working with a community in Michigan, and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan is so incredibly beautiful and natural resource rich, and extractive mining practices have been prevalent there for a very long time. And the community where we're working in particular, the mine is going to be closing in the next few years, and the community is looking at what responsible and sustainable opportunities they have for economic development moving forward. And they've identified sustainable tourism as what they'd like to explore. So we're working with the community there to develop community-based tourism experiences and really make sure that the community has the say in how tourism develops. Oftentimes tourism develops in kind of an ad hoc manner, and the goal is just to bring as many people as possible to a place. But more and more research and our work at CREST has really indicated that that's not the best measure of success. More and more people, it's the quality of the experience and making sure that the community itself is protected, and the natural resources and the culture that tourism really relies on can remain for the future, for the community itself and for future visitors. So we're working with the community to make sure they're really driving that change that they want to see, and that tourism happens on their terms.
You raised so many things I want to ask you about. how much time we got to go through. But one, you just talked about the U.S. and about Michigan, and it was nice to see Talia, who worked with us in Mejdi many years ago. It seems to me, and tell me maybe I'm wrong, but it felt to us when we started our tours in Mejdi, we did international trips. And a few years ago, we realized that there's so much potential in the United States that is ignored, because people often think, I want to travel as far away as possible, and often miss the beauty and the stories and the things we don't know around our homes. And with COVID-19, we actually realized maybe this is the time. So we are working and organizing trips that working with communities, like you're saying. But do you feel, or how do you think travelers will change the way they travel in the United States? Will we really see a movement or people saying, I want to go to the Great Lakes and to Michigan, not just, I'm going alone for a couple of days to downtown in whatever city, Chicago or Detroit or wherever it is, and take some photos and leave, but really explore the stories, which doesn't happen that much in the US. It happens much more in Vietnam, and it happens much more in Cuba than it happens in our own backyard.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think COVID-19 is providing the opportunity for everyone in the travel industry, whether it's the destination or the businesses or the travelers themselves, as a critical part of this whole experience, to do some inward looking at how we've been traveling in the past, and maybe what opportunities we've overlooked that are right in our backyard. So as CREST is looking at the recovery from COVID-19, we really feel that the first steps are going to be people exploring in their own backyards much more than they had been before. I live in Charleston, South Carolina, and I have been here for 4 years. And while I've done a lot in Charleston, there's a lot in South Carolina I still haven't done. And there's so much, just within a day's drive, half day's drive to do. And I think that it will provide an opportunity for individuals to support their own communities as they're getting back on their feet economically, but also a way to get to know your own community and be more of a part of it moving forward. We also will see a lot more driving destinations in general, I think.
And well, now that we're talking about COVID, do you think that the tourism industry is going to change completely when people start traveling again. And also, I know that it's one of the biggest industries or employers around the world. That's something that you talk about as well. How is that going to affect all of these people that, or also full states or countries that were, all focused on tourism, right? There are specific countries, especially I think in Asia, that are focused almost completely on tourism. How is this going to shift and change these places or these communities?
That's a great question. And I think that we're all, it's a waiting game right now to see fundamentally how things will change. But I think that there is a big opportunity right now to apply innovation in the time of crisis. I mean, this is the best time to make the changes that need to happen in order for it to be a more equitable and a sustainable industry moving forward. So while destinations and companies are in the middle of this grand experiment where they completely unintentionally have this downtime that is not necessarily wanted, but is here. Now is the time to really look at those opportunities for how we can build back better and what we can do differently to really make it a better and more resilient industry for all involved. So I think there will be, of course, similarities moving forward. There will always be a portion of the traveling public who are looking for those mass tourism, sun and sand only experiences. But I think a lot more people are going to come out of this looking for something different. They're going to be looking for some perhaps more off the beaten track destinations than they would have experienced before or would have considered before. They'll be looking for those uncrowded experiences. They'll be looking for destinations and businesses alike to communicate with them about what they're doing to make their visit safe and hygienic. They will be really expecting really high quality service and the health protocols to be in place whenever they arrive. They won't want to feel unsafe once they get somewhere. So I think technology will play a big role in this in trying to spread out visitors so that there aren't so many crowds, but also in forms of hygiene and safety moving forward.
And I assume this pause in tourism is also helping some of these locations. Like I know that specifically here in Israel, the beaches are much cleaner.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that, and I don't know if it will affect people, there might be this sort of like race to get somewhere first so that you see it clean and you see it untouched, I would say.
Yeah, I think that there right now is kind of shared confusion over what different restrictions mean in different countries and even different states within the United States. Everyone in the United States each state is kind of for themselves and figuring out what they're comfortable with. So I think it will definitely take some time for there to be kind of a mass return to travel. It will be slow and incremental while everyone is still figuring things out. But yeah, there's definitely, we're at a crossroads right now, and tourism could go one of two ways. We could sprint to return to the old ways of doing things and focus on any business being good business, or we can look at this in a better way and see what can we do to make sure that tourism is a viable industry moving forward. And that is fundamentally reliant on sustainability and community involvement in the process of tourism. Much of tourism in the past was very siloed and decisions were made just based on what was good for the economy. And the measure of tourism success has been how many visitors can be brought to a destination. And it's clear that that is not a sustainable way to move forward with the tourism industry. So this is providing the opportunity for destinations to really look at that. I think Portugal is doing some really cool work right now. They have a clean and safe stamp that provide guidelines for businesses to make sure that they're ready to host visitors. And they're also redoing their sustainability plan right now because they realize that a healthy economy is going to be reliant on a healthy social sector and environmental sector as well. So hopefully lots of good changes will come from this.
And over-tourism was a problem that needed to be addressed. And this, in some ways, have helped us rethink of how to do it, I think, which is a positive thing. But I actually want to take us maybe into a different direction. And since COVID-19 has started, and one of the questions I think has been raised is how do you, as a responsible traveler, deal with cancellations, for example? How do you, as a responsible company, deal with cancellations? And it's something we in Majdi had to deal with it. We, in some ways, lucky because I think many of our travelers are very conscious. I mean, we've raised tens of thousands of dollars just for our tour guides, who our former travelers were willing to donate. So we're lucky in that sense, but I think it's a question that's even people who have booked the trip are asking, what do I do? Do I cancel? Do I get my refund? How much refund do I get? And companies are saying, well, if everybody cancels, then those companies, you know, I know many of our vendors will not survive if we tell everybody, oh, okay, sorry, we're gonna cancel and think about it later. So what's your approach to that?
That's a great question. And it's a really hard question to answer. And I think there's a lot of trial and error going on right now in businesses. And of course, the longer this stretches, the harder it becomes to manage the fallout of this. A lot of businesses chose immediately to just, you know, provide refunds, you know, no questions asked, but how long is that sustainable? How long can they long can they survive as a business with that approach? So one really innovative thing we've been seeing companies do is provide, you know, travel vouchers where they don't provide a refund, but provide the voucher for the traveler to take a future trip with the company whenever it is safe to do so. And I think that we will shift more and more in that direction.
Good answer. I like your answer because that's exactly what we're doing.
Good.
And obviously in certain cases that's different, but yeah, I think travel vouchers where you don't lose your money, but also you give hope to the vendors and it helps the companies we work with, whether it's the bus companies or whether it's the hotels or whether it's the guides, to stay in business and know you still have work. It might not happen now, but it'll happen in 6 months, in 9 months, as people start shifting and using that travel voucher.
Right.
And also when we're talking about being a responsible traveler, I know that a lot of, at least our travelers are asking themselves, how do I choose the company to travel with, or how do I choose how to build my my travels in order for me to make sure or ensure that I'm going to be a responsible traveler?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's exciting that more and more people are asking those questions and are aware that there is a difference in the type of travel that you can do. I think socially responsible companies are really excited to share what they're doing, and they certainly shouldn't be afraid to do so because more and more consumers are looking for that information. So first, to make sure that the companies you're looking at are actually, you know, doing something, and they should be sharing that in publicly available places. There are some really high quality social impact reports out there now that companies are starting to put out annually, where maybe it used to be a shareholder report. Now impact reports are becoming more prevalent, and they're just really, really exciting to read. There's also prevalence of certification programs now. Certification can be a wonderful tool for a business to show that they're meeting international best practice or national best practice benchmarks. And at CREST, we work closely with the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, and the GSTC has on their website a list of guidelines for destinations and hotels and tour operators that are internationally best practice standards. And you can use those even as a traveler to kind of go through a checklist of things to look for if you would like to. Whenever you're looking for a company or a destination to visit. And
I used exactly that when I was writing a chapter for my book on how do you tell what's a sustainable company, hotel, and I used exactly those standards saying
good.
That we're looking for. So.
That's wonderful. There are also certification programs like B Corp, which I know Majdi was an early adopter of B Corp. And it's not necessarily a certification, you know, just for the travel industry, which is wonderful because it's showing that, you know, the travel industry is not different than any other industry. We should be following responsible practices. So the standards are very high for B Corp certified businesses, and we're seeing more and more travel companies engaging in that certification program, which is really great. But in terms of just traveling in general, there are several things a traveler can do just to make sure their impact is more positive than negative on their trips. The first is conducting research, learning about the destination's environmental, social, cultural, and political issues, and just having that awareness and understanding as you're going into a place. While you're at a destination, vote with your dollars, eat in locally owned restaurants, stay in locally owned hotels and B&Bs when possible, buy local handicrafts and products, hire local guides who really know the place well and live locally, and pay a fair price for the services that you are offered in a destination. Being culturally sensitive is important. Study up on the local customs before your trip and learn some words or phrases in the local language. Ask for permission before taking photographs that have people in them or entering sacred places or homes or private lands of any kind to make sure that you have permission to be there. Dress appropriately. A lot of travelers don't necessarily realize whenever they go somewhere that there may be different expectations whenever they're in a different environment and in a different culture. So just being aware of that and acting appropriately. And then, of course, being environmentally conscious while you're traveling. Try exploring places on foot or by bike whenever you can. Utilize public transportation, which really gives you the opportunity to live like a local in many experiences. Follow the leave no trace policy. Don't leave behind anything that you should be able to take back out with you, and refrain from taking natural objects from a place, you know, like dirt or seashells or sand. Those are vital parts of the ecosystem and should be left a vital part of the ecosystem. Use reusable water bottles, bags, utensils, etc. whenever possible. There are lots of great traveler items that you can carry with you now, and when it's safe to do so, using those instead of throwaway items is always a great choice. And then just treat the destination like you're visiting someone's home, which you are. Don't do anything in a destination that you're visiting that you wouldn't do at home, or you wouldn't feel comfortable with someone doing at your home either. Avoiding circumstances that endanger animals. I think animal welfare and tourism is having a big movement right now. And I really feel strongly that the way you can start to care about something, whether it's wildlife or other cultures or people in general or a natural environment in particular, the best way to start caring is to actually experience it. So experiencing those things in a responsible way, and then taking those lessons home with you and seeing what lessons you can apply in your everyday life that are supportive of these ideals that are important to you and have become more so from your travels.
I think that's awesome, because in some ways, I think of my own travels, and I think of so many things I didn't know, or it wasn't on my radar to care about before I traveled somewhere. And it's only because I went there, I found myself caring about it. My work isn't focused on, for example, conservation. But I was going to Vietnam and learning about the red-shanked monkeys, who are endangered monkeys, and by far the most beautiful monkeys, I think, in the world, that I became really excited about. It's going to Belize and learning about the ecosystem there and the amazing work the government has done actually in creating protected national parks in the sea, in their shores, protecting the fish there. It's incredible. And suddenly, you know, I snorkeled for 10 minutes and I was like, yeah, we need to protect this thing. It's too beautiful to destroy it. So, but part of it's also, I think, asking a lot of questions. And I think people kind of sometimes shy of asking. And I like it when people call me and say, well, I'm thinking about traveling with you, but how do I know you are a responsible company? How much do you pay your guides? How much do you... I'm fine with those questions. And I think if a company is not fine, you know, nobody wants to give you every price they pay for, because then that's problematic issue, but there are things they can't. And I remember going on one of my trips to visit somebody's home that my guide took me to, that I hired. And I asked how much you're paying that family for hosting us. And they were paying them literally nothing. And by asking that question, you decide if this is fair or not. And then you decide if you think they should be paid more or not. And you learn a lot more. And I think just because you hired somebody to do the work for you doesn't mean you don't have any responsibility anymore. So that's my my take on, in addition to everything you said. I want to ask.
I agree. I just want to add shortly, Aziz, and then I'll go back to your question. But
if people have questions, it's time to start sending them. So go ahead.
Fine. I just wanted to add and say, connecting to what you both said, we always encourage our travelers, and I encourage everyone listening, when you're planning a trip, to ask to meet local people, like you were saying, Samantha, and we see that a lot of people, especially that are coming to Israel, Palestine, are looking to see the highlights and the holy sites, and we usually encourage them to meet someone from a different religion, to meet a local family for dinner. And I think that these connections that we're creating, as you were saying, they connect you to the land, they connect you to the place itself. And Aziz talks a lot about travelers that used to come and take pictures of him as a kid, but then leave and not even talk to him. And that's something that I would see a lot when I was traveling in Africa, for example, you know, those jeeps that drive by the tribes and they open the window slightly to throw candy. And it's these types of things that taught me how to better travel. So I think that, like you were saying, is while you travel, you learn how to be a responsible traveler. But I think that going back to COVID, something that we can learn is kind of stop, try to think about how we were traveling before and what is the next destination we want to go to, and how are we going to do it. And I think that one of the questions that someone asked is exactly that. Do you think that people will be more interested in nature after they've been cooped up at home?
Yes, definitely. Almost all of the research we're seeing coming out lends itself to that exact thing, that people will be looking for those natural experiences, wanting to get out on hiking trails, out on the water, being in uncrowded settings. And I think coming out of this, when everyone is looking to have those experiences, we'll have to become innovative in how we are making sure that those remain, you know, wild, uncrowded experiences as well. And the industry might need to consider doing things like timed entries even for hiking trails once we get back into full swing of tourism after this. So yes, that's the number one trend that we see that will return most quickly.
You're muted again if you're trying to talk.
You know, I don't want to talk too much, so I keep muting myself. It's a way of making sure that I don't over talk.
What do you do on your tours when you're live?
It's a problem. Talk to travelers who travel with me, and they'll tell you how tired of hearing my voice they become halfway through the tour. Now, another thing in travel that I think that has kind of become a trend, and I'm sure you guys probably have dealt with, is volunteering while traveling. And something, Kim, we sent this week a chapter, our reading. Every week we have a reading from my book. And this week we sent a chapter about volunteering where Kim was volunteering in, where were you, in Zimbabwe? And you also did the volunteering in Ethiopia. And volunteering is such an amazing thing. I've done it back in Jerusalem, my hometown, for a long time. But it also has become a problematic aspect in travel, where volunteering has encouraged wrong practices, have encouraged corruption, locals being taken advantage of. it's become all about the glorification of the traveler and the volunteer rather than being all about the people who are you going to serve, or the idea of I want to volunteer for half an hour on my tour and I think I'm going to change the world because I took 30 minutes and I don't know, did something everybody owes me in that country. What's your thoughts about volunteerism, and how is that going to play out in the soon or far future of reforming that kind of aspect in travel?
That's a great question. I think that pre-COVID, we were starting to go down a path of understanding the problems with volunteerism that can arise if not approached in the correct way. And I think first and foremost, it's important to recognize that the initiative or the idea of wanting to volunteer is an inherently good thing. It's good that people want to give back. So how can we as a travel industry help to facilitate an understanding of what is an appropriate way to give back and what isn't? And how can we speak louder about the issues that are arising and kind of come together around those things? We are seeing this, around orphanage tourism in particular. There have been some really outspoken leaders in the travel industry that are really changing the face of how orphanage tourism, which in itself just sounds so terrible, is operating, which is a good thing. But at CREST, we have developed a traveler's philanthropy handbook. We created this publication in 2011. It's a free resource that's on our website, but it's about how travel businesses and destinations are facilitating give back opportunities in an appropriate and meaningful and impactful way, not just repainting the same wall over and over again or creating dependencies by giving handouts whenever that's not the best way to go about it. So we have this free resource on our website, and we're actually redoing it right now because this has really come a long way since 2011, the concepts behind voluntourism and travelers philanthropy. So we're actually calling that more generally impact tourism now. And we have case studies from destinations and companies that share their best practices for how to give back effectively as a traveler. And we're also seeing some really cool destination-wide programs now where destinations come together or where tourism businesses in a destination come together and in strategic partnership with community-based organizations, whether they be environmental or social, are putting together really meaningful programs in an organized and strategic way. And this is a really great thing to see because a lot of times those give back programs can be pretty unbalanced. Sometimes there might be a lot of money flowing into them, sometimes there might not be. And by coming together and forming a holistic program, it really ensures financial sustainability of the programs, as well as just organizing in a way that can be marketed and promoted and shared in a holistic way and educate travelers.
Thank you. I think that's amazing. And we just sent the link to the handbook on our chat, so everyone can take a look as well. I think that the first things I understood while volunteering is that you shouldn't come to it as though you are going to change the world. Even if it's going to be for a full year, I think that you're changing a little bit of the world. It's like another piece of the puzzle. And once you look at it that way, it just opens your eyes to everything else. So if I was sweeping the floor, I was helping probably one of the employees that works from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. But, that was one day of his life and not the whole world. But definitely something to think about. We have another question from the audience, from the listeners. Asking about, you were talking before about how number of visitors is not a sustainable way to measure tourism success. Can you talk about alternative metrics?
Yeah, definitely. Another common measure, of course, is GDP, but what arrivals and GDP don't really get to is how much benefit is actually staying within the community. In tourism, there's a lot of leakage. So within a community, there might be a tremendous amount of the money that is made from tourism that is actually going back to a multinational company and not staying in the country at all to benefit from it. So one thing that really needs to happen in the industry is to figure out a way to come up with metrics to measure social and environmental impact. And because those are not, tangible things, it's much harder to do that. But I think there is a realization amongst the industry that we need to come up with ways that destinations can actually use. And those don't really exist right now. Of course, there are qualitative methods of doing that. And a lot of destinations who are committed to a sustainable future are using those in the balance of measuring success. Of course, arrivals will always be part of it. Visitor expenditure will always be. Those are the things that we have the metrics for. But in terms of actual metrics for those those more intangible things, we have a lot of work to do. And I think that there are some really important conversations happening right now to get to that. But one thing destinations can do is to look at destination certification, and that does provide some additional guidance for destinations who want to include this.
That question was asked by Rodrigo, who's from Colombia, and I believe Colombia, for example, has one of those eco certification that can help. And this is maybe also for travelers, is look, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes we can look at B Corp, which is very important, part of it. But when I'm going to a country I don't know also, and I'm working with local operator there and I want to tour it, I look at what local certification also exists.
Yep.
And Colombia is a good example where it does have, I think it's the eco-tourist certification, which looks at your best practices. I thought maybe we can, for another question and before we wrap up, is ask you about the concept of community tourism. People hear it a lot, talk about it a lot, but I'm not sure really people understand what are we talking about when we talk about community tourism. So do you want to explain a little bit, because this is a lot of what you do, is develop community tourism projects. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, with community-based tourism, we typically are talking about communities being in the driver's seat and around the table and deciding fundamentally what they want to share with visitors, and being the ones who are benefiting from that economically and making the decisions about it. This can happen in small destinations like the rural community where we're working in Michigan, or it can be a larger city where communities are really participate in the process of tourism and really focusing on those individual localized businesses that you can't find anywhere else that are really special. So I think it can happen on any scale. And one thing we always look for in a destination is if there are opportunities to create circular economies, where it's a virtuous cycle, where one part of the economy benefits another part, and their waste is actually the good thing that feeds the next part of the economy. This happens a lot with agriculture. And we're working with the World Wildlife Fund right now to look at this and food waste specifically in destinations, and how hotels and restaurants can minimize their food waste on the front end by using more locally sourced agriculture, but then composting or using a biodigester or whatever it may be that provides an output to the farmers to fertilize and compost, et cetera, to then provide food to the hotel and so forth. So we always look for opportunities to create those virtuous circles in community-based tourism.
Awesome. And I know this is one of my passions, to work with community-based tourism, some in developing our own tours, but some also just going and helping friends. And we've done a lot of pro bono and projects where we've done that, and it's one of the funnest thing I think you could do is be involved with the communities. And sometimes you get, I know when we were planning our trips in Oman, I remember traveling there with a friend of mine who's an archaeologist and one of the main sites there, and we went visited the site, and it's a very important site to go to. It's Sabat. And said, oh, there's a village close by. We should go and visit them, and maybe we can have lunch with people there. And he said, no, we can't. Why not? And he said, because they don't want to be part of the tourism industry. And sometimes community tourism is also saying, you know what, there are communities who don't want us to be coming in, and we should respect that. They didn't have a problem with us going to the archaeological site. We went, saw the place, and then we did go visit another community who were interested in having tours. And I think every community should have the right to say, yes, you are welcome, come. We want you to to be our guests, and here's the rules of engagement, because it's their community, we are guests. And for those who say no, we should be willing to be okay with saying no. All right, Kim, should we answer the other questions or finish here? I'll let you.
I think we can finish here and have people stay with something for the future. Looking forward for more.
I'll send you an answer to your question about the West Bank after the show. I'll send you an email, and Rodrigo, same thing, happy to send you a response to your question as well. But we're going back to soccer, right?
We're going back to soccer.
And last week...
or generally sports events.
Sports, I mean, when I think of sports, I think of football. See, living in the States has corrupted me, even I say soccer, because I have to, I'm part of a league and they call it their soccer. Unfortunately, so I get used to the word. But yeah, we ask people to send us photos about their sports. And
here's Paulina. She was with us on the last on our last episode. This is when the German league came back last week. So they stopped their car and set up sort of like a...
They won 0 in their game. I watched it too, and it was fantastic, fantastic game. By the way, Liverpool might be buying one of those players from that team. Hoping. Sanchez, yeah.
You actually played soccer also with Pauline in Israel, right?
Better than me, yes. She's professional. She's very good. And here's our winner. We decided not to be biased and just go for football, but actually look at other photos as well. And so our winner is Valerie Howell, and the photo is of people surfing.
Which I think is actually one of the sports that people actually enjoyed during COVID, because no one else was at the beach. So it's a nice photo to think of, especially while it's so hot here in Tel Aviv. Thank you. You'll be receiving Aziz's book, Crossing Boundaries, A Traveler's Guide to World Peace. And for next week, we're asking that you send us pictures of crowded places. We were talking about over-tourism today a little bit, so we're thinking about these crowded places that I know today looks so weird to look at this kind of picture, similar to seeing people hug. So send us the pictures by Wednesday. And again, we'll be showing the winner on our next episode, and of course, that winner will be receiving Aziz's book.
And next week we have an amazing show, because we will be talking about Northern Ireland, and we will be going through kind of our dual narrative idea that we do in Israel and Palestine, that we also do in Northern Ireland. And one of our very, very good friends and innovators and thinkers and so on when it comes to peace work in Northern Ireland, Gary Mason, Dr. Gary Mason, Reverend Gary Mason, I don't know which title to use, who will be joining us, and we're gonna have a conversation about how you can travel Northern Ireland differently, but also talk about Catholics and Protestants and the whole conflict there and the troubles and the vision for Northern Ireland, especially now with the changes that happened with Brexit. We'll be touching on all these topics, and I promise you it'll be an amazing conversation.
And thanks again to Samantha for joining us today. I think that it was super interesting, and hopefully we'll create or bring our travelers to read a bit more about CREST and about responsible travel. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. And I think the same message we ended up with last week, we can end up with today, that it's not really where you travel, but it's how you travel that matters. Well,
exactly.
And have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone.
See you next week.